Well, welcome to the webinar, everyone. Having a little bit of a technical issue here with the presentation, but you know what? We're going to get through it. I'm going to back up here to the beginning. Today's all about blood pressure and understanding what it is, understanding why it's important, understanding why we need to know about it, but most importantly, to understand why it has been labeled the silent killer in America. And chances are good that if you yourself don't struggle with high blood pressure, you either live with somebody who does, or you have a very close relative, friend, or family member that does struggle with it on a daily basis. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't see it as a struggle. They actually just see it as a way of life, and they think a pill, a potion, or a lotion is taking care of their issue. But as we're going to see, there's a much bigger problem with that thought process. First and foremost, what is high blood pressure? First, you need to understand that the term high blood pressure is synonymous with hypertension. It's dangerous because it makes our heart work harder. Obviously, we don't want our heart to overwork. We want it to work the way it was intended to. But it also contributes to hardening of the arteries, also known as atherosclerosis. So if you hear that term, it's basically a hardening of the arteries. Also, stroke, kidney disease, and heart failure. Those are kind of the issues that we're dealing with when we're talking about blood pressure. But most people immediately associate blood pressure or high blood pressure with heart disease, but they don't understand that the bigger risk is actually for stroke. The main risk factor for somebody who has high blood pressure is to have a stroke. Strokes can be deadly, as we all know, but they also can be extremely debilitating and life-altering. So we need to understand that. But of course, they are still a major risk factor for heart disease, heart attack, heart failure, and kidney disease. And of course, now there's increasing evidence that there's also a high risk factor for vascular dementia. In other words, it's also shown to be affecting the brain. So high blood pressure can also affect our cognitive abilities as well. So let's understand some basics. Before we start talking about what does 120/80 mean, we need to understand what systolic and diastolic are. Systolic basically means the pressure of the blood leaving the heart. In other words, as the heart contracts and pushes blood out, what happens and what's the number there? That's pushing it out. And of course, diastolic is blood coming in. That's why going out there's more pressure because it's being pushed out. That's why the number is higher. Diastolic, it's sucking blood in. That means that's the pressure of it actually bringing blood into the heart. That's why that number is slightly lower. In fact, if you want to know what the numbers with regard to normal, elevated, high blood pressure, stage 2, and then hypertensive crisis are, then you can see these numbers right here. If you don't know what your blood pressure is and you haven't checked it in a long time, I highly recommend you get it checked. One of the easiest things to do is next time you're in a pharmacy, in a Walmart, and a Target, or anywhere else, just walk over to the existing pharmacy, sit down in the little chair, and have your blood pressure checked real quick. Or for $15, $20, you can buy a blood pressure check machine at home. But this is something you need to check on a regular basis. And of course, if you suffer from high blood pressure, you should most definitely be checking your blood pressure on a regular basis to determine whether or not it is in fact high, elevated, or what the case may be. Here's the interesting thing. People with high blood pressure don't correlate the disease or the issue with what they should. In fact, they see it as a minor inconvenience. But when you're driving down the road and everything seems to be fine with your vehicle and the check engine light comes on, most people have a panic attack. Most people start freaking out. Most people want to immediately get into the mechanic. They want to figure out what's going on with the car. They don't drive around with the check engine light just on all the time. Well, I say that, some people do, but the reality is most of us, when that happens, we want to get it checked out. What I want you to think about is high blood pressure is like your check engine light just came on. It's the body's warning system basically saying, hey, Houston, we have a problem. We need to get this checked out. This is not something that can be easily taken care of. We need to address the issue, and we need to address it now. Unfortunately, what we do a lot of times is we just go to the doctor, take the pill, and think, okay, we can keep doing what we were doing because the pill is going to take care of my blood pressure. we need to understand the symptoms of high blood pressure. And these are some that, happen on a regular basis that we don't associate with high blood pressure. So from severe headaches on a regular basis to vision problems, difficulty breathing, pounding in the chest, neck, or ears. Some of these things we associate with allergy-related issues or sinus infections. Fatigue, chest pain, obviously, or irregular heartbeat will definitely get your attention. And of course, blood in your urine should most definitely get your attention as well. But all of these are symptoms of high blood pressure. This is something for the ladies out there. High blood pressure is a leading risk factor for death in women in the United States. I want to say that again. High blood pressure is the leading risk factor for death in women in the United States. It contributes to more than 200,000 female deaths a year. That's 5 times more than breast cancer. But most women spend more time focused on trying to prevent breast cancer, identify breast cancer, and take care of breast-related issues, and ignore the high blood pressure that they have and understanding it's more likely to cause their death than breast cancer is. In fact, 77.9 million American adults have high blood pressure. As we sit here right now, you're dealing with, roughly 80 million Americans that have the issue. That's a huge percentage of our population. I mean, you're talking about, about 1 in every 3.5 Americans. So 1 in 4, let's say, Americans have high blood pressure. In fact, kids who have a high sodium diet are twice as likely to develop high blood pressure as kids with low sodium diets. And right now we're dealing with an issue with children in this country where 1/3 are overweight and their primary source of food is in bags, boxes, jars, and cans in the form of processed foods and fast foods. The issue is going to get much, much worse unless we start identifying that high blood pressure is the body's check engine light, and we need to not treat it as an inconvenience, but as a real issue. So the reality is right now, in addition to the people that have high blood pressure, there's more than 100 million of us that are walking around with pre-hypertension. So if you take the number, roughly 80 million, you add that to the 100 million, there's roughly 325 million Americans. That means you have 180 million people that have high blood pressure or are pre-hypertensive, and you have 140 million that don't have the issue, and most of them are children and young adults. So if you want to know what pre is, it's right here where the systolic, or where the blood's going out at 121 to 139, and diastolic from 81 to 89. But the reality is most people that are in this pre-stage don't even know it. In fact, the stats can be staggering. Right now we have 1.5 billion people in the world that suffer with high blood pressure. Actually have high blood pressure. 1.5 billion people in the world have this issue. Most of them just ignoring it or treating it with a pill. In fact, the scariest part is more than 20% of people that have high blood pressure don't even know it. It's a higher percentage of people that have pre-hypertension that don't know that they have the issue, don't know that they have the disease, and have not started a correction protocol in their diet and lifestyle to try and curb actually getting to the high blood pressure phase. Right now, hypertension in America is costing the U.S. economy about $46 billion a year. This is because of all the medical costs, treatments, pharmaceutical drugs, and other things that have to go into trying to manage the issue for us. The reality is most of this cost could be eliminated with diet and lifestyle, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a second. Here's the bigger thing. High blood pressure is contributed, or is basically the primary or contributing cause to 397,000 plus deaths a year in the U.S. That's more than 1,000 deaths per day in the U.S. See, and a lot of us, when we hear the word high blood pressure, think, not a big deal, not something I really need to worry about, something I'm dealing with, but, I can take a pill, or it's not really something I should be concerned about. But the reality is, this is a killer of people every single day. In fact, at least more than 1,000 a day are dying with the primary or contributing cause being high blood pressure. In fact, high blood pressure causes 40% of all heart attacks and 60% of all strokes. Hopefully by now, I have your attention with regard to how big of a problem this is. You are literally dealing with a situation where 40% of heart attacks are caused by high blood pressure, 60% of all strokes caused by the problem. So what causes high blood pressure? Let's learn what it is. Excessive salt consumption. Now, That's first and foremost. When you're talking about the main American diet, or the SAD diet, what they refer to as the standard American diet or SAD diet, comes from bags, boxes, jars, cans, fast food, and processed foods. I mean, it's just loaded with salt, as you're going to see in just a second. Genetics. Genetics play a huge role here. Your family history. If your mom and dad had high blood pressure, guess what? You're at greater risk. You're going to have to be more vigilant with your diet. It can just be that you lost the genetic lottery in this regard, and you may end up with the issue and the disease of high blood pressure that you're going to have to manage. Sleep apnea. That's right. People that don't sleep well, people that are inhibiting their sleep cycles, people that think, I only need 4 hours sleep a night, guess what? You are greatly increasing your chances of getting high blood pressure as a result. Obesity. Obesity is one of the leading causes of having high blood pressure. We're putting so much visceral fat around our organs and tissues, specifically the heart. We're making it work harder. Making it work harder makes it, raise the pressure to basically push the blood out and suck the blood in, thus raising our blood pressure levels. So right now, what we're dealing with is three of the biggest issues that we deal with is what we're eating, how we're sleeping, and what our weight is. All of that is, as you can see, the leading causes of high blood pressure. And then, of course, if that wasn't enough, the sedentary lifestyle. Well, the sedentary lifestyle basically is what's leading a lot of us to the obesity side of things, because we're just not moving anymore. We're basically sitting behind desks, looking at computers all day, and then not moving. So whole idea here is a sedentary lifestyle is a big contributor. Drugs and alcohol, and not just talking about here about illegal drugs, I'm also talking about over-the-counter and prescription medications are also leading causes of high blood pressure. And of course, alcohol consumption is a leading cause as well. Poor diet, that's kind of goes without saying. Smoking is a leading cause. Hormonal conditions, when we have hormonal imbalances and things, what is it now? I think it's 1 out of every 4 ladies in this country are on some form of thyroid or hormonal correction medication. And then, of course, kidney disease, as we'll learn why kidney disease is directly related to high blood pressure. And, of course, kidney disease can be directly related to alcohol consumption, drug consumption, smoking, and other things as well. So 9 out of 10 Americans consume excessive amounts of salt. So let's talk about salt for a second, because salt was the #1 contributor to high blood pressure. So let's get that. And oh, by the way, that's daily, in case you didn't know. 9 out of 10 are consuming more salt than is recommended. In fact, the average American daily intake is 3,400 milligrams per day. That's a lot of salt. In fact, here's an interesting fact for you. Too much salt can raise blood pressure. That's right. Amounts that you consume, over 2,300 milligrams, can raise your blood pressure. Remember, the national average is at 3,400. So we are incrementally increasing our chance of contracting high blood pressure because of our just natural consumption. The average American consuming more than 1,100 milligrams above the rate at which can raise your blood pressure. But here's the thing a lot of people didn't know. Too little salt can actually raise your blood pressure even higher. See, our bodies actually need some salt in it. And by reducing or completely eliminating salt from our diet, we can actually cause more harm than we did by basically reducing our amount. So again, this is one of those situations where it's a little known fact. A lot of people can overdo it when they're trying to reduce their sodium intake and trying to eliminate it from their diet. But just understand that amounts under 1,300 per day can actually increase your blood pressure higher than overeating of the substance. So this is a belief system that a lot of people have. The leading cause of excess salt consumption in the United States is that wonderful salt shaker. Well, the reality is that isn't true. Not even remotely close. In fact, 75% comes from processed foods. That's right. 75% of the salt we eat on a regular basis comes from the bags, boxes, jars, and cans that we make our food from, that's pre-prepared for us, that's in the fast food line, that is in the restaurants. I can't tell you enough that it has been proven over and over and over again that in the United States now, that restaurants are just as bad when it comes to salt, if not worse, than fast food. So be very careful and understand that we have an issue. In fact, if you look at the source of all the salt consumption, 77% is from processed foods, 12% from natural sources, 6% is what we add while we eat, and 5% added while cooking. So hold on a second. That means only 11% of the salt that we consume is actually coming from the salt shaker. Think about that for a second. If all you've done to basically try to reduce your salt consumption is reduce the salt shaker or eliminate the salt shaker, you're only taking care of 11% of the problem. 89% is still in that food. One of the other things a lot of people will fall for is when they go and they see these terms. These light or reduced sodium, low sodium, very low sodium, sodium-free, and unsalted. Each one of these terms actually has a meaning. But what's interesting is light or reduced sodium. What that means is 25% less than is normally in that food. So guess what? If the food normally has 5,000 milligrams, guess what? I only have to reduce it by 25%, and I can put light or reduced sodium on the label. That does not mean it is a light or reduced sodium food. This means I've reduced or lightened the load of sodium that was in there originally. That doesn't mean it's still not high sodium content. But yet people fall for this all the time. Low sodium, that just means 140 milligrams or less sodium in one serving. Also be very careful here. What is the definition of a serving? How many bags out there, I mean, look at your potato chip bags, have 20, 30 servings in them. They can be labeled as low sodium as long as a serving is less than 140 milligrams of salt. Very low sodium is 35 milligrams or less per serving. Sodium-free is less than 5 milligrams. That's right, even sodium-free can still have sodium in it. And then unsalted means no sodium added to the food. If it's naturally occurring, it can still be labeled unsalted. So again, know your label terms, don't fall for the marketing trick. We've talked about this one. Removing that salt shaker is only going to eliminate 11% of the problem. And that's unfortunately what most people do when they are trying to reduce their salt consumption to address this issue is they're just going to take the salt shaker and put it up. But the reality is the salt's already in the food that we're eating. Here's an interesting fact most people didn't know. Do you know that your blood pressure can vary by arm? That's right. You could take your blood pressure in your left arm, it can be one thing, in your right arm, it can be something else. Make sure if you are concerned about your blood pressure, if you have pre-hypertension, or more importantly, if you actually suffer from high blood pressure, check both arms. This is something that a lot of times doctors and nurses will do just to verify what's going on in the body, because you may have restrictions and other things with regard to your blood pressure. But make sure you check both arms because it could give you different readings. Here's an interesting fact. Potassium is critical to maintain healthy blood pressure. That's right, potassium. Now, what do we think of when we think potassium? Everyone thinks of the same thing. I don't even have to say it. I can hear people yelling it right now. We think, bananas and things of that nature. The reality is we need to get 4,700 milligrams per day. That's our target. Okay, 4,700 milligrams per day is our target for potassium intake. And if you're really thinking banana, guess what? Here's what you're dealing with. Okay, if bananas are your primary source of potassium, then here's what you're looking at. It does have a lot of potassium in it. It is a high caloric food. It is a fruit, which is great. We need to eat more fruits and vegetables in this country, and of course, it has 27 grams of carbohydrates. But if potassium is your sole source of, if bananas are your sole source of potassium, guess what? You're going to have to eat 11 of them, or consume almost 1,200 calories worth. You're going to be consuming almost 300 grams of carbohydrates as a result, and you're still not going to be to your potassium intake for the day. We need to understand that there's a lot of foods out there other than bananas that can keep us on our health journey, help us maintain our healthy weights that we're looking for, by helping us increase our lean muscle mass, decrease the fat on our body. And potassium is sourced from many different areas. In fact, here's a picture that kind of gives you a good idea, from apricots to avocados to seeds and nuts and salmon and tomatoes. And there's great sources of potassium in a lot of foods. The best thing about starting a health and wellness journey, especially, if you're suffering from a disease and you're trying to reverse old habits, is learning all of this new stuff, exploring different foods and food choices, and finding things that you had no idea that you loved and would love to add to your diet. But most importantly, if you do suffer from high blood pressure, you need to understand the importance of potassium intake, especially when about 99% of the U.S. population is potassium deficient. I want to let that set in. 99% of the U.S. population is potassium deficient. Why? The simple answer is this. We do not eat our fruits and vegetables, and many of us do not eat fish on a regular basis. That's it. We don't eat our fruits and vegetables. A lot of us don't eat fish very often. As a result, our potassium levels are greatly depleted in this country. It's really that simple. By the way, if you're looking for a great, electrolyte replenisher that includes potassium, the IdeaLife Hydrate drink has that in there, and that can help. That's 100 milligrams of potassium. It's great for electrolyte replenishment. It can help you throughout your day. It can also get you to start drinking more water, which you'll see in a second becomes very, very important. The things to know about high blood pressure. 1, hypertension directly increases the risk of heart attack and stroke. We've talked about that. 2, it's particularly prevalent in people who have diabetes, gout, and kidney disease. So if you have diabetes, you're pre-diabetic, guess what? High blood pressure is next. In fact, most people don't realize diabetics die 68% of the time of heart disease. Again, it's the warning sign, the body trying to tell us something's coming on. Hypertension is asymptomatic. That means you don't really necessarily feel it. You don't necessarily have any symptoms as a result of it. It's just there. It's making your heart work more often, and you don't want that. Prevalent in people with a family history. Again, if you lost the genetic lottery, sorry, but you're going to have to pay attention to your diet and lifestyle choices to help offset the genetic lottery loss that you have there. It's prevalent in obese people and heavy drinkers of alcohol, which we've talked about. Prevalent in women who are taking oral contraceptives. That's right. If you're trying to prevent getting pregnant and you're on an oral contraceptive, you have a greater risk of contracting high blood pressure as a result of the drug that you're on. It affects children and teens, so don't think just because you have kids that they cannot be affected. You want to get them checked out as well. Weight loss drugs can cause this to be worse. That's right. A lot of these pills, potions, and lotions, the get skinny quick pills and things that you hear so many companies talk about, guess what? They can actually cause the high blood pressure to get worse. The systolic blood pressure is especially important as one grows older, so you need to understand that as the body is contracting and pushing blood out. You need to pay attention to that number. And then, of course, blood pressure changes during the day. It's lowest as you sleep and rises when you get up. That's why almost 70% of heart attacks occur in the morning. The body is waking up, a lot more pressure on the heart. You just need to understand that. You ever heard of arugula? Most of you haven't. Average person is eating a cup of arugula about every 10 years in the U.S., but it has great benefits for people with high blood pressure. In fact, it's one of the green leafy vegetables most commonly recommended, and as you can see, as you read the list of things and the benefits, it helps in a lot of different areas, from boosting your immune system to weight management to improving eyesight to relief of symptoms of osteoporosis to also reducing the risk of heart disease and premature aging. We need to get back to understanding how food is the source of health, that diet and lifestyle choices are where prevention comes from. We need to make better diet and lifestyle choices. And the better diet and lifestyle choices we make, guess what? The less nutritional supplementation we need to have. So here's something you need to think about. High blood pressure is basically thick blood. That's the way you need to think about it. So if you have a liquid that is thick, and now I'm going to get back to thinking in the kitchen. Okay, so one of the things about these Wednesday Lunch and Learns is we want to make sure people have information that they can act upon, information that they can share, but most importantly, information they understand. See, the biggest problem in medicine is doctors will sometimes explain situations from a medical terminology standpoint, and it just doesn't commute. They're talking, but there's no communication going on. What we want to make sure we're doing here is giving you the information that you can act upon. So high blood pressure, thick blood. If you're basically cooking something and it's too thick, what do you do? What do you have to do if something's too thick? Well, it's real simple. You add water to it. Guess what? One of the best natural remedies for high blood pressure, one of the things where you can help yourself and the people that you care about and love the most is if you have somebody that you know or you yourself are suffering from high blood pressure, increase your consumption of water. I'm not talking about liquid. I'm not talking about sodas and fruit juices and everything else. No, I'm talking about water. If we have thick blood, we want to water it down. We want to help thin it out. One of the easiest and fastest ways to do that is consume more water. So just understand that, folks. We need to get back to drinking water. Cannot stress enough that hypertension is a silent killer. It is something that is attacking us. It's something that we don't pay attention to. It's something that we don't give credence to. And most importantly, we do not give it enough credit with regard to the problems and issues it causes us. Yes, you can take a prescription and it will temporarily reduce the amount of hypertension that you suffer from, but guess what? The disease is still there. The issues are still there. The check engine light is still on, and you still need to address the underlying cause of the issue. A pill is not addressing the underlying cause. A pill is a temporary solution to a diet and lifestyle problem. We need to start taking control of our lives and stop relying on pharmaceuticals to take care of the issue. I can't be more blunt than that. We just have to. And you need to understand this thing is killing us. So if you are suffering from high blood pressure, if you know somebody that is, if you care about somebody who does have it, or one of your loved ones or friends has it, let them know that their check engine light is on. Let them understand the significance of it. Let them understand that this is kind of the first phase or first stage of something they need to pay attention to. Because here's the thing, if you don't, 1 out of 10 people that have a heart attack in this country and die, 1 out of 10 people that have a heart attack and die, the first day that they understood that they had a heart-related issue was the day that they died. If that doesn't get your attention, I don't know what else will, but I will tell you this. 1 out of 6 people that have a stroke in this country, same thing. They did not know that they had any type of related issues that were contributing to a potential stroke until the day that they had it. There was no warning signs. High blood pressure is a warning sign. High blood pressure or even elevated blood pressure is a warning sign. You can't say you didn't know or you didn't have any indication or I was on my high blood pressure pill. Guess what? We need to make some changes. We need to have a diet and lifestyle modification to improve our health. These lunch and learns are all designed about giving you information, and sometimes they're hard to hear. Sometimes people just either aren't prepared or aren't willing to listen, but the reality is this. We're always going to be here. We're always going to be telling you exactly what you need to hear. Maybe you're just not ready to hear it yet, but the issue is simple. Diet and lifestyle choices are contributing to the nutritional gaps that we have. The better diet and lifestyle choices you make, the less nutritional gap you have, the less supplementation you need to have in your diet. So, the whole idea behind these is to basically give you the information you need so you can make informed choices, and that's what we're here at IdeaLife to do.